live from Columbia. This is WIS News 10 at 6. Live, local, now.
We have found a body that the coroner has identified as Faye Maureen Swetlick.
A tragic update to several days of searching for sweet, bubbly Faye Swetlick.
We are now treating this case as a homicide.
A community now grieves, trying to come to grips with the unthinkable.
I am so sorry. Prayers is out with you and your family and that poor baby girl. I'm so sorry.
Hundreds of law enforcement officers around the country worked tirelessly, day and night, trying to bring this little girl home safe and sound.
As this community has been working hard to find Faye and bring her home safely, we wanted you to know as soon as possible.
As the investigation shifts now, questions remain.
What a difficult day, as it was a tragic update this evening in the search for 6-year-old Faye Swetlick, as we learned her body has been found.
For days now, as law enforcement officials searched tirelessly throughout the community for that little girl, everyone has been hoping, praying that Faye would be found alive and returned home safely. Unfortunately now, the tragic news that shifts this to a homicide investigation. Our live team coverage continues for you tonight, covering every aspect of the investigation.
We want to go to Caroline Hecker, who is across the street from Trinity Baptist Church on Charleston Highway, a place of a prayer vigil earlier this week, and also the doors are open there this evening for anyone who wants to go and pray. Caroline, you were there as the police chief gave today's tragic update.
And Dondi, really, quite frankly, it was hard to listen to because he was really struggling to get the words out that Faye, in fact, had been found dead. And then in addition, that deceased male found in close proximity to her body. The KC Department of Public Safety just posted an update on their Facebook page I want to talk about a little bit for what people can expect here in the coming days. They tell us that the identity of that deceased male will come from the Lexington County Coroner's Office, and that they will be also providing periodic updates for us here in the next couple of days. But they also talk about from the criminal investigation side, if there is one, regardless, they are investigating a lot. They talk about a large amount of physical evidence. So they say they will continue to try to provide updates as everyone has been accustomed to over the last couple of days, but that they are sifting through a lot of different pieces of evidence to try to piece together exactly what happened. We know from that press conference that Faye's death has been ruled a homicide. We don't know yet the manner of death of that man, the male deceased victim that was found near her, but it coincides with what we heard earlier today, which was about 10:45. There was a very large surge of law enforcement that entered the neighborhood and has remained there for much of the day. We've talked about how there is crime scene tape up in a portion of the wooded area along Airport Boulevard behind the Napa Auto Parts store. That borders the property line for many of the homes and apartments on Londonderry Lane where Faye lived with her mother. But again, it was absolutely heartbreaking to try to listen to the chief deliver us that news. He did say no arrests have been made at this point. He did not allude to the idea of any kind of suspects yet, but he also stressed that there is no danger to the public, and he wants those tips to keep coming in. He said this investigation is far from over despite the discovery of her body, and they need the public's help to, again, try to put together that timeline, piece together everything that we know. Now, Emily Wakeman has been live outside the Churchill Heights neighborhood all day. And Emily, I know the teddy bears and the balloons and things like that, that memorial is growing outside that subdivision. What have you seen in the last couple of hours?
Well, Caroline, it's been an extremely somber environment here outside of the neighborhood in the wake of the news that little Faye's body was found in the neighborhood directly behind me, along with an unidentified man. And you can tell that this community is truly heartbroken. In the last hour alone, people have been coming by this neighborhood, stopping in front of the Churchill Heights sign, sometimes for a moment or two even, just standing there looking at the sign, leaving flowers. And like I said, this is all in the last hour alone. And this is a very busy interstate area. As you can see, cars are constantly coming by here. But as they come by, a lot of cars slowing down, looking at the police presence. It has a heavy atmosphere out here. But you can, at this point, there are a lot more questions than we have answers. Investigators, as you mentioned, Caroline, weren't able to give us any information at this time as to where Faye's body was found, as well as where the unidentified man's body was found. We don't know how closely those bodies were found together. Now, what we have seen today is an increased presence in front of the neighborhood. Now, at about noon today, that presence really hit its highest point. There was about 10 to 15 law enforcement in the front of this neighborhood. That was a huge presence compared to previous days where there was only about one law enforcement really just controlling who came in and out of this neighborhood. This neighborhood was still allowing residents to come and go before today, but as of today, we were told that this neighborhood from neighbors was locked down. Even residents weren't allowed to come and go anymore as of about noon today, and they were given no indication as to a timeline of when they might be allowed back in. And from what I've seen, residents still haven't been allowed back in. It has been extremely quiet, so I don't know if officers have told residents anything. I really haven't seen at this point many people even trying to enter the neighborhood. I have seen a huge presence of law enforcement trying to enter the neighborhood, and they ride through, but I've only seen about 1 to 2 cars as of this point trying to go inside of the neighborhood that don't seem to be law enforcement. But I also want to just draw a little bit of attention to what we're seeing as far as where law enforcement have focused. We mentioned that yellow tape was also found at behind the nearby business, the auto parts right here. There's a small wooded area, and from what I'm told, it's only about 200 to 400 feet in distance from the duplex apartments where Faye's mother lived. Now, Faye's mother's duplex was about 0.2 miles up from the entrance around to the right. So that caution tape seemed to be backing up to the woods directly behind the duplex. And then also we saw that caution tape to the right in this small wooded area. Like I said, we've had no indication though at this point what that caution tape means and where we're at in this investigation as far as where the bodies were found. But we're going to continue to bring you all of those updates as we hear it from officials. Judy?
Hey, Emily Wakeman, thank you so much. Appreciate your reporting there. And again, we just wait to get more details about some of the answers to all the questions that we have. We definitively know a few things that were not the news that we wanted to hear, but the how and where and when and maybe even the why has not been answered yet.
A lot of you are asking on our Facebook pages if we know how Faye was killed. Those answers will come from the coroner. A number of you also asking whether it was a man or a juvenile who was found, the second body that was found in the neighborhood today. And investigators have told us that they don't have an age. That information, again, will come from the coroner. So at this point, this really shifts as it moves into that homicide investigation to the investigation that has to be done, the collection of evidence by the police. But the next round of information will come from the Lexington County's coroner's office, and we'll certainly keep you updated on that. We also want to show you a memorial. It is growing outside right now of Springdale Elementary School. Now, this picture was taken just a short time ago, but someone just texted me and said even more items in remembrance of Faye have been placed there this evening.
This is where Faye was a little first grader, and Drew Ungst is live now from Springdale Elementary School. Drew?
Well, like you guys said, that memorial has actually grown. In the last 2 minutes, I saw one family with a young boy and a young girl actually stop by and place some flowers below the sign here at Springdale Elementary School. The little girl actually lingering a little bit after her family just to kind of see what was left behind for one of her classmates. And I'm going to step out of the picture here and just kind of give you guys a live look at what's going on at that memorial right now. We're going to get a little bit of a zoom here. It's right underneath that sign. I know it's a little dark, but you can see just a few of the balloons and flowers that are placed there. Now, this is something the families of this school have already had to address with their young children, with, Faye being missing this week. Many of those kids asking their parents why Faye wasn't at school this week or why they wouldn't see Faye on the bus. And obviously the developments today making answering those questions even more difficult for those parents here at Springdale Elementary School. Many teachers around the area that I spoke with last night saying that they're thinking about their students this week, and obviously this bright little girl holds a very special place in this community still. Live in Springdale Elementary School, Drew Ungst, WIS News 10.
All right, Drew, thank you. And we did receive a statement from Lexington School District 2 within the past 2 hours.
That's Springdale Elementary, where we just saw Drew, and where Faye attended school.
The statement says, "We are heartbroken with news of the death of Faye Swetlick, a first grade student at Springdale Elementary, who went missing earlier this week. When the school community experiences a tragedy like the loss of a child, it deeply affects all of us. Well, in addition, a letter was sent to families and parents at Springdale.
And it says in part that extra district and school counselors will be on hand in the coming days to talk to students, teachers, and staff dealing with this tragedy. Also, just another update for the people who live there in the Churchill Heights community. We were talking earlier today about how they completely restricted access even for those who live there. They tell me now that those who live in that community are allowed to return to their homes. We do want to take another look now at the investigation so far. According to law enforcement, around 2:50 on Monday afternoon, that's when a witness saw Faye Swetlick get off of her school bus, and at 3:45 that same afternoon is when family members report that they last saw Faye in the family's front yard. And it was at 5 o'clock that evening when law enforcement say they received the first report that Faye was missing. That sparked the days-long search that brought us to the tragic update we received today that Faye's body has now been found. And we have learned that the focus has now turned to a homicide investigation. While law enforcement works to continue gather evidence in this case and to focus on the homicide investigation, they are urging the public to continue to call the tip line with any information you may have, anything you may have seen on Monday afternoon, anything that may have been captured on your home security video. Nothing can be too small. They say that officers want to know every single detail to help them figure out exactly what happened to Faye.
And the community continues coming together in the wake of this tragedy. A vigil is being hosted actually in Lancaster County in Kershaw at the Farmers Market, and also just a few miles away from the scene of this investigation, there's one at a church. Now, this one is the Frontline Biker Church that's hosting it at the Kershaw Farmers Market. That's just off Main Street in Kershaw, again in Lancaster County. It started at 5:30. It is open to the public. And closer to home than that other time of prayer is at Trinity Baptist Church. The doors open there this evening at 5 o'clock to the sanctuary, open to anyone who'd like to go and pray.
That's where a community prayer vigil was held earlier this week. Tonight, church officials say they're inviting the community to come back because they know that so many people are struggling to make sense of a tragedy that really makes no sense. So they have opened their sanctuary for anyone who would like to come by and spend time in fellowship and worship. We will have much more on today's tragic news, the death of Faye Swetlick, coming up right here on WIS News at 6.
A quick check of the forecast here. You'll notice first alert radar still showing some showers across portions of the Midlands. You'll see Clarendon County here, some steady rainfall there. Also for areas in Calhoun County, parts of Orangeburg County that we're seeing some rainfall. And then behind this, we're talking about some cold weather. Check this out, 41 in Nashville, 42 in Memphis. We're in the 60s. Get ready for some cooler weather with the numbers in your first alert 10-day forecast.